Hey guys, this is Jonathan Lampel, and today I've got a Blender tutorial for you. And as you can see from this picture here, it's about how to crash a car. So this is something that I thought maybe could be done with dynamics or maybe a combination of different things. And I wasn't quite sure how to do it, but once I did it, it's actually fairly easy and really flexible. So you can see here that it's not really the most realistic crash, but the good thing about this technique is that you can put it in as much detail as you want and it's fully customizable. So um, any type of crash that you need, two cars crashing together, honestly anything you want to do, it works great. So this is just a render preview here, and here it is in the 3D window. Let me just turn on screencast keys here just 1 second so you can see what I'm doing later. Okay, so if I scroll through the timeline, you will see the car is coming up, hits the pole, crashes, the window explodes, then the ball comes down and smashes that. So this is just kind of like a little test that I did. It's nothing too serious, but we're going to be rebuilding this type of scene, putting in a little bit more detail. Obviously I didn't really do the back windows or anything yet. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to go to File and New, and one thing to note is that you do have to be using the very latest version of Blender. This is revision, let's see, yeah, revision 54121, so anything that or later should be good, because we will be using a few of the new features and introducing them to you. So here's the default scene, and what I'm going to do first, just so I can explain what I'll be doing, is we're going to set up a bullet animation with the new bullet physics, and that's going to be kind of a proxy for the car. Then we're going to parent the car to the physics, and then once that gets run through, we change that into keyframes, and then we're going to be using shape keys for the deformations and particles for the exploding windows, and it all comes together quite nicely. And yeah, like I said before, it's really customizable and you can do whatever you want with it. So I'm going to delete the default cube here, and I'm going to add in a plane. So this will just be a little runway for the car. Scale it up on the Y, scale it up on the X, scale it up on the X some more, on the X. And by the way, how I'm doing that is I'm just pressing S and X. Since I switched and started a new one, I have to start that again. Okay, there you go. Now you can see everything that I'm doing. Okay, scale it on the X a little bit more. And then I'm going to add this a rigid body and just change this to passive. So as a general rule, whatever is you don't want to move, so this is just going to be a stationary object, you can use passive. If it's active, if it's actually going to be moving around. Okay, so now we need something for the car to crash into. Last time I used a pole, and that worked pretty well. So I'm just going to add a cylinder, and then scale Shift Z to scale on everything but the Z axis. Move it up, and then scale on the Z axis. So it's a little bit taller. It's a pretty thick pole, maybe it's a telephone pole or something. Okay, and then before we go any farther, we're going to have to import the car. So I'm going to go into a new layer, and for this car I downloaded from BlendSwap the mic pan test scene. A lot of you probably already have it. If you don't, I don't think you can get it from BlendSwap at the moment because it's down. They're revamping their site, I believe, but you should be able to get it in my in the link down below. So if you don't have it, then you can go get it. So I'm just going to go to File and Append. Now I just navigated to the file, just clicked on it, and then went to Object and select everything and hit Link Append. So now we have all of this, but I really don't want the whole surrounding stage and cameras and everything. I just want the car. So I'm going to deselect everything, select that, hit delete, delete that, delete that, uh, delete the cameras, and then these two things are, as you can see, they're exactly the same. They just are the objects that define the shape of those controllers there. So I'm just going to move those to a new layer because we don't want to delete them. And yeah, I think we're good. One reason I use this is this file is that it has a really nice rig. So you can see if I go into pose mode, this kind of tilts the car, moves it around. This directs where the wheels go, and these direct the turning of the wheels by scaling them up and down. So I'm just going to select these and press Alt-R so the wheels are facing straight forward, and go back into object mode. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to go into side orthographic view, and I'm going to add a cube. With this cube, what we're going to do is we're going to be making kind of like a proxy object so that the bullet engine doesn't have to simulate all of these vertices in the car. It's just going to simulate a really simple object, making it really fast. So, side view, I'm just going to drag this out a little bit. I don't want it to go all the way because we want the car to, oops, I forgot to turn that on so I can select everything. We don't want the car to hit the, sorry, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Okay, so if we have this here and it's the proxy object and it collides here, then there won't be any room to smush because we want to add shape keys. And so if we do that, then it won't actually intersect, and we want it to do some damage. So I'm going to put that back there, and this one over here, I'm putting it behind the wheels because we don't really want to mess with the wheels too much. You can if you want to make it a little bit more detailed, but for this I think I'll just not worry about that. I'm going to move it down to where it's almost touching the ground, about there. But on top, I'm going to move it down all the way down to there. So if we have something land on it, you know, it'll actually smush in the top there. Then I'm going to add a loop cut with Control R, slide it back there, just kind of bring that up a little bit, but more so I'm going to bring these down, just in case we need to smash that, bring these down. There we go. So it doesn't look a whole lot like the car, but it's close enough, and I think it'll do the job nicely. Lastly, I'm just going to scale it in on the wide just a little bit. Scale it in on the wide. There we go. Just so we have some room to destroy things. So then I'm going to move that by pressing M, move it into the first layer. So in this layer, I have all of my dynamic things that I need to run the simulation. And then in this layer, I have the car itself. Okay. So instead of moving that back along the runway, I'm just going to move these two things up like that. This one, I already have the passive rigid body set up, but I did not do it for the cylinder. So just click rigid body, change that to passive. Okay, and then the car. So the way we're going to do this is, first you have to make sure that everything is about the same as the ground plane. That just makes it nice and easy. So move it towards the green line. It's good enough. Okay. So you don't want things intersecting during the physics. Okay. So this, as you probably guessed, we're going to add a rigid body to that too, but we're going to keep it active because that's the one that's moving around and doing all the colliding. But we do want it to go from here to there and hit the car, or sorry, hit the pole. So I'm going to make this animated. So I'm just going to hit that, and then on frame 1, I'm going to choose location down here and press I to set a keyframe. So you see it says adds 3 keyframes for a location. So it contains the information of the location, but not the rotation or scale. So if I need to change that later, I can do so. But it'll just set the location. So then around frame 50, let's go 40. Yeah, there we go. I want the car to be all the way over here. So I'm just going to press I again for the location. And then, actually, no, scratch that. Press Alt I. Delete that keyframe. Go to 50. On frame 50, I want it to be all the way at the pole. So if we play this back, you can see what's happening is that it just kind of moves, slows down, kind of. We don't actually want it to slow down, though. We want it to keep speeding up until it hits the pole. And the reason it's slowing down first at the end is you can see this really clearly if we go to the animation, or you can just switch to the graph editor if you'd like. You can see that the location of this is kind of illustrated here as a curve. And since it's a curve, you can see that it starts gradual, gets faster, and then here it kind of curves off, so it slows down before it stops. So to get rid of that, you just select that handle, press V, and change it to vector. So what that does, it makes it make it a completely straight line. That way it doesn't slow down at the end. But we want it to slow down at the beginning, so that should work out great. So let's try that again. See, it's speeding up, and it just stops. So that's okay, because all the bouncing stuff is going to be simulated by the physics, and we don't really need it at that point anymore. So right about 40, I'm going to hover over this animated little checkbox, and I'm going to press I. And what that does is keyframe the check so that on the next frame I can uncheck it and press I. So here it's animated, and then here it's not. So when it's animated, the rigid body isn't actually controlling it, but once that is unchecked, then the rigid body has full control over what happens. So if you see, if I play this back, does that. So that looks, I mean, it's okay. I mean, you can see it works, but it seems really light. It seems like a cardboard box is kind of hitting a brick wall, and that's not what we like. So I'm going to change the mass over here. If I change this to something really big, say 50, that should do it a whole lot better. Too much. 25? Still too much. Actually, one thing that I should do is, you see that it's hitting it straight on. So since it's a cylinder and it actually has a face facing straight there, and this face, it's not really twisting around the pole at all, which I don't really like that. So going back to frame 1, I'm just going to move this a little bit over there, hit I, and then this button down here jumps to the next keyframe. So I'm going to jump to the frame that I had it keyframed at, which was 50, and I'm going to move it a little bit over as well, so that it hits the side of it and not the front. So that way it'll kind of like spin around it. There we go. So maybe I did want 50. Oops. See what that does. You know, that's still a lot, but let's try 75, just see what it does. I think this used to have in the test builds like a unit, but I don't see that here, so I don't really know what units it's in. Maybe it's just automatically in metric units or blender units. I don't know what blender units for mass is, so just kind of go by guess. You know, seems like it's flying around a lot, but that could be kind of cool. So just adjust it to whatever you think is most realistic, but for that I think it'll make a nice crash. I'm going to scale this on the Y a little bit so it doesn't fly off the edge here. And I'll play the back one more time just to see how it does. Okay. You know, I kind of liked it when it flew up in the air. See if I can get that again. Landed on its back. Oh, I forgot. Okay, so quick thing, you'll notice that rigid bodies don't have any caches. You know, other things do, like cloth, fluid, smoke, and soft body, but rigid body actually doesn't. And this is just because it's real time, I suppose, but you can see here it still has the cache like baked line down here, and that means that no matter how many times you go through this, it'll play exactly the same, and you can scrub in between and all that stuff. So to get a different result, all you have to do is change, one of these settings. Maybe you want to change it to 60, then it'll free that, and we start again, you'll get a different result. Okay, so that'll be good enough. And then I kind of want a secondary collision just to make things more fun. So I'm going to Shift S and cursor to selected, so that'll position my 3D cursor right where that car box is. And then I'm going to add a sphere. So just kind of like the other one, I just have a sphere, and I'm going to position it off to the side a little bit so it kind of bounces down and rolls off. Scale it up, and then Control A and apply scale. One thing when you're working with dynamics, you should apply your scale beforehand, because sometimes it'll cause a lot of problems if you don't. Okay, so I'm going to make that a rigid body and active, but I don't really want it falling down right away. So if you see, it just falls straight down. But I don't like that. So the car's not under there until, what was it, like frame 60? So on frame 60, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the car. Check, let's go 70. Okay. Hit I while hovering over it, go to the next one, uncheck it, hit I, and there you go. So you see the car comes, bounces off, lands on it. Yeah, it needs to be a little bit higher because you don't want it bouncing off. So just kind of jump to the, actually no, since I didn't keyframe the location, I just keyframed this, I can change that whenever I want. So without even keyframing anything, I can just drag that up and play it again. There we go. And then I'm going to move it over just a little bit so it kind of hits off the edge. I don't like it rolling straight down. It looks too flat that way. And I'm changing the mass to 25 to make it a bit heavier. There we go. That worked well. And then one last thing I'm going to try is I'm going to make this a little bit bouncy, just to see what effect it does, because cars do have a little bit of bounce. It didn't do a whole lot, but that's okay. I think that'll do us just fine for now. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. I didn't really go over all of these. I just went over the very basics. But really for this, that's all you need to know. And for the sake of time, I don't really have enough time to go through all of it, because he wanted the videos between 20 and 60 minutes, and this might be pushing it. So let's just go ahead and proceed as if that were perfect. That was exactly what we want. We did all the tweaking, and that is just fantastic. So I'm going to take this and this and line it up with that because I moved it over, and then take this because you can see if I grab this in object mode, it controls where the car goes. So I want to parent that. Oh gosh, now it's going to be hard to select. Okay, I want to parent that with the box that we made. So just press Control P, Object Heap Transformation, select everything, and then we can go down. It's not actually in the rigid body section, which is a little bit weird, but we can go in the rigid body tools in the toolbar, which you can open and close by pressing T, by the way, and then bake to keyframe. So if you do that, you get these little options. We want it to stop at 250. I'm sure it'll be done long before then, but excuse me, that'll work. Frame step just says how many basically frames per second you want it to calculate. I would leave it at 1. I've tried changing it, and it's kind of buggy at the moment, so I wouldn't trust it with anything but 1. So just hit OK, and it'll take a second. You see it'll bake 1 keyframe for every frame, because we said frame step 1. And if we play this back, we'll see we have the exact animation, and the car is parented to it. So that's pretty cool. So just so you can see this better, deselect that and hide the box, and then play this back. Car comes, hits the pole. That is nice. That is really good. Actually, that's almost perfect with what I wanted, because you see here, right where it's intersecting the pole right there. That's definitely what we want. And then, you know, it kind of flies up at a crazy angle, and then that hits it, rolls off at very nice, and then that kind of slides into there. So I think that'll work really well. But how are we going to do the actual deformation? Well, I'm glad you asked. So if we kind of scrub along here, you see that it hits the pole at, just go to side view here, it hits the pole basically at exactly frame 51. 52, it's all the way in there. 51, it's all the way over there. So that's basically the moment of impact, or as close to it as we can get. So we're going to use frame 51 and 52 for keyframing. So I mentioned shape keys earlier, and if you don't know what that is, basically it animates mesh data. So you know, when you're animating something, you can't really change the actual geometry of it, but with shape keys you can. The problem is you have to have the exact same number of vertices in all of your shape keys, so you can't be going and ripping edges or anything like that, or else it'll completely destroy your shape key. So you have to keep it the exact same mesh, just move it around. So before I do that, I'm going to go in. I believe, did I combine anything yet? No, I didn't. Okay, so I'm going to go to the second layer where the car is, and just kind of zoom to it. So I'll hide that for now. And what I want to do is I want to kind of combine the parts of the car so that they can all be deformed at once. Because you can see down here we have all these little grills and lights and all that stuff. And while it would probably be more accurate if I, you know, animated them all separately, it's a heck of a lot harder and takes a lot more time. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to select everything, go into side view, deselect the wheels. That wheel in the middle there is for animating purposes. I probably should move that to another layer, but just kind of deselect that as well. You can kind of disregard it. And then hit, when you have all that selected, hit Control J on the keyboard, and you can see that it joins everything together. So if we go into edit mode, well, even in object mode, you can see that all of the modifiers have been applied to the one that was selected, or it copied the one that was selected. And I definitely messed up because there was two things that we didn't want to copy. So I mentioned the wheels we want separate, but we also want the windshield separate, because we want the windshield to be exploding, so we don't want it to be the exact same mesh. Yeah, there we go. And then I'm going to hit Control J after selecting that to make it the active object. There we go. And you can see that these things kind of appeared, but I think that was hidden in the original mesh. But if you hit Alt-H, you can see that there was also, I think there was also an object of those. No, maybe that was just in the one I was in earlier. Okay, so in edit mode, I'm going to select these front glass headlights because we want those to explode just the same way as we want the windshield to explode because it's glass. So hit Control L with one of its vertices selected. And you can kind of grab it around and make sure it's the right one, and then just hit P and separate by selection. And what it does, it'll take that geometry, make it a completely new object. So that's good. That's what we want. I'm going to hide that again for now. I can see immediately we have kind of a problem with this over here, and I think that was just a problem from joining it. They had two separate, subdivision surface modifiers, which prevented this. But since we applied the majority of the modifiers when we converted, then we're just going to have to do a little bit of manual cleaning up. So just kind of select vertices where you can see it's connected to the seats inside of there. Just gotta pull them in. Oop, that's not one. There we go. Where's another one? There. Okay, much better. And just to make sure it's completely good, I'm going to increase the subsurf to make sure it's all clean. Okay, cool. So there we go. Now that we have that all taken care of, I'm going to take the windshield and actually just select the car mesh and hit, I think it's Control I. There we go. Yeah, Control I, and that selects everything except the object that you had selected. And I'm going to move that to a different layer just for now. So we don't even have to worry about it. We can see exactly what we want to be deforming, not worry about anything else getting in the way. Okay, so if we go, I believe it was frame 51. So if you go down here, press frame 51, it'll just go immediately to that frame, and you'll see that right here is right where we want it to be deforming. So I'm going to add in a shape key. First you have to set the basis, which is the basically the foundation that you all the other shape keys are based off of, hence the name. Pretty clever there. And then I'm going to add a new one, key 1, and you can see that just as a little test. Oh shoot, I forgot to do the mirror modifier, and I even had the pole selected. Wow, great job. Worst tutorial ever. Okay, I'm going to apply the mirror modifier because you can see that if I add a shape key here, if I add a shape key and then try to go and apply this, because we don't want it to, you know, demolish uniformly, that's kind of silly. If I try to apply that, you can't apply a modifier with the shape key selected. So I'm going to take that away before we get in too in depth with it, and then just kind of apply the mirror modifier. But you see, since there was a few objects like the grill down here that weren't even mirrored, that didn't need to be mirrored, and so it kind of doubled it over onto itself. I don't know if you can actually see it because all the vertices are right on top of each other, but if we select everything and go to remove doubles, you can see that it removed almost 2,000 vertices. So you really want to be sure that you do that first, otherwise you're just going to have doubles over the place and it really gets messy. So be sure to do that. And then subsurf, I could apply one more level. How dense do I want it? I think I'll be good. If you want to go, like, basically the more detail you want, the more subsurf you want to apply now, because you can't really apply it later. But for now, I'll just stick with this. Actually, I'm going to apply one, and then add another subdivision surface, and then just not view it. Okay. There we go. So, back to what I was saying. In the object data, you can see that we have the shape keys, and I already explained the basis, and then key 1. So what this does, you can see if you go into edit mode and take a vertice, let's just say this one, drag it up somewhere so it's really obvious. If I go back into object mode, you can see that that didn't happen at all. What I did in edit mode has not affected the object whatsoever. And that's because on this shape key the value is set to 0. However, if I slide this up, you can see the vertice coming up, and there we go. I think just by doing this you can kind of understand exactly what it's doing. It's how much this shape influences the previous one. So I'm going to delete that shape key. We don't really want that little triangle up there. Add a new one, and now let's get to deforming, kind of smashing it all together. So in frame 52 is where it's inside the pole, and obviously we don't want it inside the pole. So let's go into edit mode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on proportional editing and make sure this is set to smooth. Then I'm going to press Z, Actually, I'm going to press this so I can see the pull at the same time. What this button does, it just lets you select everything, no matter if it's hidden or not. Not hidden, if it's behind another object. So you can see that the center of the crash is about right here. That's where it's really going to be hitting the pole. So I want that to be about here. That's about where it would hit. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag it back. Okay. Wow, this has not happened before. Please don't crash. Please don't crash. Please. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, looks like it crashed. I guess I'll have to redo this part. Ah, oh, thank goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, I don't know what happened there. Um, wow, I consider myself very lucky. I forgot to save. So let that be a lesson to you. Go to File, Save, and car crash tutorial .blend. Okay, so I don't know why that was all weird, so I'm just going to press grab and then X, slide it back, and what the heck? Okay, I apologize. 1 second here while I get this all figured out. Let me just restart Blender. Okay, wow, that was a really lucky place to save. So, proportional editing, sometimes it takes up extra memory. Though I have plenty of memory, I don't know what's going on here. So if I just select that vertice, enable, maybe just because it's so dense down here, probably because I applied the subdivision surface modifier, it's probably just so dense that it takes up too much memory, unfortunately. Yeah, there we go. When I select just one vertice, it works perfectly fine. I don't know what was up with that. So if you scroll up and down on the mouse wheel, I also believe it's page up and page down. Yeah, that works too. You can adjust the influence of the proportional editing. So I'm just going to scroll it back to about there, because I mean you can see where it's intersecting the pole right there. And that is a really unrealistic crash. I mean, it's not bad, but it's really unrealistic because it's not really random at all, and it's not really how cars crash. So I'm going to change this now from enable to connected. And what this does, you can see if I just select something on the hood, that it only moves the vertices that are directly connected to it and not anything else. So that's a really handy tool, and I'm just going to pull this around some more. Maybe I want the hood to buckle, because that's what hoods do when they crash. So I'm going to turn down the influence, excuse me. About there maybe. You grab that one, just kind of pull it up. It doesn't have to be too neat or anything. I mean, after all, it's a collision. You don't have to be super precise. Obviously, the more realistic, the better. But I mean, for now, I think I'll just kind of wing it. If you look at reference material, you'll definitely see hoods kind of buckled like this, maybe a little bit more extreme. This is where the subdivision surface, like I said before, comes into handy. Wow, comes in handy, because if you added more polygons, then you'll have much more control here in this stage, where you can really adjust exactly how you want the car to crash, and it's completely adjustable, and you can adjust it at any time, even after the simulation's done and you're almost ready to render, and you're like, oh wait, let's change this. Then you can just go ahead and change it. It's not a big deal at all. So that is a big plus. Let's see, another thing. Let's just kind of pull that back a little bit, kind of detach the edges of this. Just kind of mess it up. Oh, that was weird. Okay. One last thing, I'm going to choose random. What that does is, just like the other fall offs, the other one was smooth, which kind of has a nice little, you know, smooth curve to it. But this one is random, and so it just kind of selects any random vertice in the surrounding area and moves it up. So obviously we don't want it like that, but that was just for demonstration. So I'm going to pull, just kind of move it around. This does get really messy, so if you're really anal about clean topology, then my sincere apologies, because this is probably driving you insane. Yeah, we have all sorts of things just kind of going through other pieces, and it's not pretty whatsoever. But the thing is that actually helps make it more realistic, I guess. At least that's what I found. It just makes it look like an actual collision. And if you see, I think that'll be good enough for now. Let's do these headlights just a little bit. Enable. There we go. It's going to be really destroyed. Okay, as we see, if I scale it up, that looks like a pretty crunched car. Like that would be a really bad day. So, you can see that if I look in the subdivision surface modifier, if I bump that up, you can see it really smooths it out. And this is another thing, or you can see here down where the polygons are all tight, you get this twisted metal sort of effect going on, and really that's what you want. So this is actually too smooth for that kind of effect, but for now I think it'll do. I think you get the point, and yeah, so I'll just move on. So as you can see here, we can slide the damage of the car from like no damage to all the way damage. And if you remember, when we were in side view, we could see that at frame 51, there is no damage whatsoever because it hasn't even hit the pole yet. So when I'm hovering over this value, I'm going to press I, and that sets a keyframe for how much influence it has. And then on frame 52, I'm going to scale this all the way to 1 and hit I as well. And if we play this back, you can see that the car comes and bam, crashes. That is pretty cool. That's a really good start. So just see it one more time, just because it's fun to look at. Coming, driving, bam. To be honest, that's not completely realistic. I understand, because we'd probably have some crumples back here. Let's see if I can add those real quick. Probably just, oh, looks like I have something selected down there. Okay. I'm gonna select this. What the heck? I do not know what's going on. Why is it selecting? Okay. Move that. Push this around a bit. I guess you can just really mess with it however you want. It's definitely not an exact science. Well, actually, excuse me, this is an exact science. But for now, it'll do without being rocket science. Okay. So, it's good enough, but I think you understand the point of how to do it. And if you really want to go in and make something crazy, that would be awesome, and I would love to see it afterwards. But we just don't have time to mess around right now. So I'll keep going with this. So you can see that was the first impact, so it hits there, and then it kind of flies around in the air until it kind of gets flattened and then hits by that little ball there. So when it gets flattened, it just yeah, there's not really too much crunching going on there. The majority of it is in the initial impact. Oh, one thing I forgot to do that actually makes a whole lot of difference is when you're making the crash, you should rotate it up a little bit. So I'm just going to select smooth and hit R for rotate. Oh, please don't tell me. Oh, please no. Yeah, I really shouldn't have done the subdivision surface on the front grille. I think that's causing all sorts of problems. Even though my computer can certainly handle all of it, Blender is not really good on high poly counts at the moment. Okay, well, instead of making you suffer through this, I'm just going to pause this and, yeah, I'll come back in a second. Sorry about this. Okay, I apologize for that. Probably one of the worst things I could do during a contest of all things. But let's keep going anyway. So what I was just about to say is make sure you kind of rotate when you deform something. Make sure you rotate it as well as just move it around, because really what happens is it does kind of crush and twist almost the entire car. So here I'm going to move it down a little bit, and then in the back, yeah. So you can see here I just did the exact same thing as earlier. Maybe it's a little bit different, but what was causing the crash is this grill down here. Like I said before, it had lots of polygons since I had subdivided it, and not only was it, you know, subdivided, but for some reason it wasn't selected when I had checked remove doubles. So it was subdivided and then doubled, and it was causing all sorts of problems. So I probably should have simplified that first, but too late now, I suppose. Okay, so we have that. Then it goes over here, and the ball kind of crashes on it, and that's the secondary kind of animation that we want to have. So again, let's keep this on. Oh, I forgot to keyframe this in my other one, so let me do that right here real quick. Frame 51. No, that's not 51. That's 51. Okay. Here we have a value of 0. Next frame, value of 1. Okay. Finally moving on. Ball comes down and hits it. Let's see. Moment of impact is... Let's see. That's where it's... 95 is where it's almost hitting it. And then that's kind of where it's at its peak. You can say that's when it's pretty much done. Is at 104 is where it's like deepest into the mesh. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and edit it. So I'm going to add a new shape key. Go in, and you can see it's the same as the base. So that is not to worry though, because we can still grab this with proportional editing and smooth on. Just kind of grab it down like that. Maybe move the wheel well a little bit down. Move to the side. Let's see, how far is the ball going? Maybe even in here a little bit. Okay, so you can see here that even with the first one enabled, I can still slide this value up, and it'll add that on top of the other one. So even though in this shape key this mesh isn't affected at all, it's not mixing the two, it's adding them on top of each other, which means it's really powerful. So it looks like with this, since we bent the trunk upwards when it crashed, then I'm going to go ahead and move this down just a little bit more, just to kind of compensate. And you can see here there's maybe a little bit too much in the front or down here. You do have to adjust for the, you know, displacement a little bit. Okay, that looks good. So no, all the way. So what did we say? 95? Okay, let's say 95. So that's where it's not yet hitting, but is just about to. Let's actually go to 96 just to be extra safe. So it's intersecting a little bit, but when it's going very fast, that is not noticeable at all. So I'm going to put a keyframe right there at 0, and then at 105, where we said it's at its deepest point, I'm going to move that all the way up, kind of keyframe that. There we go. Looks like I forgot to start that again. Okay, So you can see here that as we play this back, scrub through the timeline, that kind of crashes. It's that hits, smushes, and arrests. So that's not entirely realistic. The rest of the car should be more affected. It should bounce a little bit, but when you're adjusting the physics and the you know shape keys, you should be able to do all of that very easily. And we're kind of running out of time here, so let me just move on real quick for the windshield exploding, and then we'll be done. So in this layer we have the windshield and the wheels. The wheels I'm actually going to move into layer 2, and so it'll just be on the same layer as the car. This I can keep there. We don't really want or even need that at the moment. This I'm actually going to move into layer 1, and the reason for that is we're going to be using particles, and this floor is going to be a collision, and the collision and the particles have to be on the same layer. So remember that. If you're ever having troubles, it might be because they're not on the same layer. So with the windshield here, I'm going to go in and select, actually first of all I'm going to apply the mirror modifier and not apply the subsurf. Since we're not adding shape keys, we don't need to add the subsurf now. I'm going to disable that, select vertically there, press Ctrl L, and P separate by selection. And as before, that makes it a completely separate object, and that's really good, but it's still parented to the car. So let's jump to frame 51 again. There we go. By the way, period on the number pad zooms into your selection. It's really handy. I use it all the time. Changed my life when I found out about it. All that stuff. So I'm going to add a particle system there, and we don't really want it, emitting this entire time. We want it really starting at frame 51. So I'm going to change the start time to 51, end time to 52. So you can see they're all emitted. I'm going to change this to 45 right now so I don't have to watch the entire thing again. So here, bam, releases all the particles at just the right time. But this needs to go be a collision, so enable that in the physics options. And you can see now, since we did that, all the particles bounce around like little bouncy balls, and we definitely don't want that. So easy way to fix this, just increase the dampening a little bit, friction a little bit, random, just a tad. Don't do too much random or else it'll look ridiculous, but just do that, and maybe a little bit more friction. Let's try that. Okay, that'll be good enough. So that's the windshield, and you can see that we don't really want it, exploding like that. That's not really exploding, that's just kind of dropping. So I'm going to choose random, and in the velocity, you can see that it's going the normal direction, but I want it going kind of, disregard that. Okay, I want it kind of exploding out this way. So you can see that that's the x-axis, or you could just look there, x-axis. So I'm going to give it a velocity of 2 on the x-axis, velocity of 2 on the random, and 1 on the normal. And with all that combined, it should, oh, my bad, x is pointing that way, so it'd be -2. Let's try that one more time. Okay, that's pretty good, but it's not really an explosion. Let's go all the way up to 5 on the random. Bam, glass shattering everywhere. Perfect. That looks great. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go to display. Actually, no, not display. I'm going to go to render and render none. And since it's displayed as render, you're not going to see anything in the viewport. If I play this back, you can see that it's invisible. But the reason for that is we're just going to go into here, and we're going to add an explode modifier. And I'm also going to add a solidify just so the glass has a little bit of substance, and that'll help when you're rendering. 0.05 should be good. You can see it kind of happening there, because right now the windshield's like paper thin. If I disable that, that just gives it a little bit of a little bit of something. Yeah, so now you see if I play this back, windshield actually explodes, but it's all those little pieces. We don't want that. So just bump up the subdivision surfaces, say to 3. It'll give you more pieces, and you can say cut edges. And what that does is it'll give these kind of jagged edges. It's not really perfect for glass, but it's a whole lot better than nothing. And it'll work for now. Okay, so back in the particles, one more thing I want to do with this is I'm going to change the random size all the way up to 1. Change the size to 0.5. Now you can't see anything here, but that's because in the explode modifier, if you enable size, it'll copy the size of the particle itself and not the size of the mesh. So just kind of bump this up until it looks about right. Maybe 1 looks good. But you can see what the random does is it gives you a little tiny specks as well as the large chunks. And so that looks pretty good. Okay, the headlights should explode about the same time because glass shatters really fast. If you've ever seen like the slow-mo guys or whatever do an animation of it, or not an animation, a high frame rate video, then it shatters almost instantaneously. Okay, so I'm going to apply the mirror modifier here, and then have this so start frame 51 and set frame 52, -2, 3, and yeah, see how that goes. So hits it, bam. A lot of particles, we don't need that many. So I'll change this to like 300. And then same thing when we went to render, none. And then add an explode modifier, cut edges. Oh, and I forgot to do the size. So in the physics, change the size to 1, random size all the way up, and bam. Goosh. That looks good. So just so you can get an idea real quick what the car is actually doing, you can scrub through this. You can see comes up, hits it, windshield explodes, headlights explode, lays on the ground, perfect. And then I kind of, I was gonna have the other windows explode right when this happens, but it's not really hitting the other ones. It's not really hitting, like, say, the back window or anything. So I'm just gonna have them all explode right when it hits the pole. So instead of going back and joining all the objects and stuff, a really easy thing that we can do is just add another particle system. But you can see here in the particle settings, we already have one set up. So I probably should have been efficient and named this. So I'm going to name this windshield. Then you can see over here, we can select windshield. Ah, look at that. It'll have the same setting as the windshield. Play this back. What is going on? Oh, it's because we don't have a explode modifier. There we go. Bump that up. 3. Size. Cut edges. Perfect. Okay. So, I don't know what is going on there. Let's go back to the frame 1. Okay. So, that's basically the entire tutorial. Let me just show you one other quick thing that really helped me when doing an animation. A lot of times I always guess when I'm doing constraints on what's the right angle to put in, but let me just show you real quick a really easy way to get it right the first time. So I have a camera in the scene already. You can see it's right there, but I don't want it there. I want it right where my viewport is. So if I just press Control Alt Numpad 0, you can see it right there, then it'll put it exactly where it is. And if I hit G and the scroll wheel on the mouse, it just kind of scrolls it back. There we go. Good, but I want it to be pointed directly at the car at all times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a constraint and track 2. Now, I want it, pointing at the car, so I'm just going to type in car shell, There we go. And you see it always has this weird rotation thing, and I always go through and be like, well, is it the X, Z, try random combinations, and it never works, but I figured out what it does. So, what you gotta do for these is change this from global to local. And then you can see the local coordinates of the camera. And you can see that the Y is pointing up, and the Z is pointing away from where you want it to be pointing. So, the up should be Y. I guess I accidentally just randomly chose it, but that was the correct one. And you can see that Z is pointing the opposite direction of where we want the camera to point. So you just press negative Z, bam. No more guesswork for you. So you can see if we play this back, car comes, what's gonna happen? And bam, collision. And smush. Okay, so you can see I definitely didn't animate the wheels properly. It's really unfortunate. But I think that's all the time we have. Thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot from it, and even though I'm not going through every setting, and also I want to do like an explosion, like a car explosion, like an actual smoke sim with this, because it's really fun, but we just don't have time. I already rushed through things way too fast. I really hope you could follow along, and I hope this gives you some inspiration or gives you a good idea of what to do in the future. And maybe it'll help you on a VFX project or something. But bottom line, I hope it's helpful. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for watching.